Hey everybody. Oh, you do it. Why don't you do it?
Well, he jumped in front of me.
Oh.
So I say the same thing. Hello, everybody. It's a Thursday. Now we're in the month of April, and it's actually a warm day. It feels really like spring. This is Passover week and Easter week, both things. We talked about that, I think, a little bit, about when those two collide. I'm always happy when that happens. Today, Mickey and I are going to talk about ambition. Ambition. Let me tell you that I thought I would start this, my part, by looking up the word in a dictionary. We don't need to do that with things like friendship and stuff. But ambition, so I did. And one of the dictionaries that I consulted said, ambition is a desire for success or power. What do you think?
That's interesting. I suppose. I mean, it's true. I guess it depends on what you consider success. Maybe that's where ambition differs for people. But I mean, on paper, it is a desire for success. I don't know about power, but I guess I can see it. I mean, I don't know. I guess it is power. I don't know. What does the dictionary say power means?
I didn't get to that. I figured we'll deal with this. Do you want to start?
Sure.
Today? Go ahead.
Ambition for me, the way that I've defined it, which is not quite the same as the dictionary, but ambition for me has always been sort of prioritizing tomorrow over today. Has kind of always been my definition of ambition, because I think that ambitious people that I know, people who achieve the goals that they set out to achieve and work very hard to do it, often tend to forsake the fun of the present moment and sacrifice a lot for this larger goal that they have. And I think that is ambition. In my life, at least, that's what it seemed to.
I think that's very smart. Yep.
I don't know if being ambitious is always a very desirable quality. I admire it a lot in people that I know, ambition, but sometimes I feel like everything has a cost, and those of my friends who are very ambitious often aren't around for what I consider the important moments, in one's friendship or life or day to day, because they're always set out to do their single-minded goal. I think ambition and selfishness kind of coincide. Sometimes it's a very thin line. To be ambitious and not be selfish is very hard. And so sometimes I think it's a bit of a balancing act to be ambitious, because you have to choose what you want to prioritize.
Well, I think ambition can be on a scale. One can be a little bit, or one can be overwhelmingly. And what occurred to me was something that I remember from therapy years and years ago, and it had to do with aggression. The idea being that there are times when you want to be aggressive, and when that happens, you are able to simply take it down from the shelf and use it. And otherwise, you leave it up on the shelf. And I could see that maybe with ambition. I don't feel that every bit of my life was centered around being ambitious. In fact, I would rate myself as pretty not very ambitious at all. And oddly, it left so as I got older. That seems strange, but I think it's true. I know somebody, I did know somebody, person has passed on now, who was almost consumed with ambition. He was very smart and quite successful, He came from a family that was well off, but not necessarily ambitious. They just got to be rich through various means. He became very ambitious for reasons that were never totally clear to me, but it seemed to me that he got to a point where almost everything that he did was through the prism of moving himself forward, moving himself to a higher plane within his profession and just generally socially.
What was his profession?
School, college.
He's a professor?
Yeah.
The professor profession.
And
Profession of professing.
and that branched out into other things too. I don't want to talk too much about it because some people will know who I'm talking about, and I don't want to do that.
No worries.
But I just think that when you get to that point that you are so consumed with it, well, it's what you just said. I mean, we sacrifice, I think. And then people begin to look at the person, I believe, with some suspicion.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Like ulterior motives. I in some regard, I do agree, because I have friends who are very ambitious and at a young age, younger than I am now, have become quite successful in the things that they're trying to do. And the overwhelming quality that I think, like I said, coincides with ambition is self-centeredness. Which, being self-centered, it has a negative connotation. It's not always negative, but to be self-centered, to center your decision-making around yourself and your own benefit, I think is very advantageous for a career. If your goal is to make money or be successful in whatever industry you're working, maybe be remembered or build a brand or a legacy of some sort, then being self-centered is super helpful, and ambition is obviously a really necessary quality. But if your goal is to cultivate meaningful relationships with the people with whom you spend your time, then it seems to me that ambition kind of gets in the way of that a lot. Because I don't think you need to be ambitious to be a good friend. And I think a lot of the best friends that I have are not quite very ambitious.
I like that. I guess I knew someone else, he's also passed on, who was the absolute opposite of this fellow. He was I don't want to talk about who he was, but he was from a very wealthy family. He didn't really have to work. He did work some in a family business, but it was sort of, okay. It was not even a very important job. And I think maybe in some ways he disappointed his parents because he was not ambitious. He was a very fine guy. He had some friends, not a lot. Tend to be rather introverted. It seems to me that a soupçon of ambition is a good thing. If you have no ambition, then your life is kind of flat. I mean, I look at you. You work at a lot of stuff. You do artwork, and you work very hard at it. You write poetry. We benefited from some the other day on one of these podcasts. You work out physically a lot. That's ambitious. But still, I can relate to you very easily. I don't see that in you. You're consumed with ambition.
Yeah, I am actually listening to a podcast right now with an artist named David Cho, who is very, very successful as an artist. One of the most successful artists of my generation, or maybe, perhaps the generation before mine, really. But he, he's a multi-millionaire, made a lot of money in art, selling his artwork. And he talked about, in this podcast, it's with Joe Rogan and David Cho, and he talks a little bit about this concept of ambition and this idea of becoming the best at the video game of life. And he talks about it in that way that kind of everything seems to be a video game for him, and if you dedicate all your energy to that thing, you can become successful at it. And it's kind of determining what it is that you want your video game to be. So he made his video game artwork, and he was pretty much homeless and a bit of a dirtbag guy when he was young, trying to be a starving artist. I'm doing hand quotes for anyone who's just listening, which is everyone except for you. And then when he was in his early 20s, he decided he wanted to play the video game of making money. So he spent a decade just making money his sole focus, and he made money pretty much doing whatever he focused on, and became very successful at those things. And then he also decided then to make his video game to be about women, and spending a night with the most attractive woman and seeing how many women he could be with. And he did that for a while. Then he got sort of tired of that, and he's moved on to this sort of spiritual video game where all of his effort and his focus is sort of dedicated towards spiritual growth. And he doesn't sell art anymore. He pretty much just gives it away because he doesn't have use for money. And he feels like it's kind of gross to sell his art if he doesn't need to make the money. And I found it really interesting because it started to make me think about what my video game of life is about. And I don't know if I ever was conscious of this until I listened to this podcast. But I think that for me, it seems that my primary goal since I was young has always been relationships with friends and people. And if that's my video game, then I think I'm winning the game. Like, I'm very good at cultivating meaningful relationships with people and dedicating my time to them. I don't know if that's ambitious. It's just always a priority that I've had. And in terms of all of my own sort of goals that I'm, on my journey trying to achieve, which do take a lot of time, I think I know for myself that if I were to dedicate 100% of my time to any one of those things, I could become very good at that thing and very successful doing it. But I don't want to, because I think, like what we said before, what I stand to lose or what I have to sacrifice in order to do that, I don't think is worth sacrificing.
I liked all that. You remember we said a few podcasts back the quote from the philosopher, and now his name escapes me, who said, "Let your best be for your friends."
Yeah.
I've always liked that, and I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's important. And I think through any of the things that I've tried to do, I've sort of always found a way to make those things focused around my relationships, whether they be art or acting or whatever it is. I've always sort of made people the primary focus, and I think there's a lot of ways to become successful, and I think most people think that the way to do it is to be single-mindedly focused on whatever the endeavor is. But I think that being a positive energy in every room that you're in, being somebody that people enjoy spending time with, that's going to get you very far in life. If people like to be around you, then you're going to find yourself with a lot of opportunities to...
Even if you're not rich.
Even if you're not rich. And if you want to be rich and still maintain a semblance of integrity with that goal, I think that it can be done. You don't have to give up everything for the sole focus of money. I mean, this is in theory. I've not successfully done it yet. But I'm testing out the theory. I'm using my life as an experiment.
In my family, my father came from a large, old-fashioned Jewish immigrant family. He was not the eldest son; he was the second eldest, and he worked hard, and he did well. He did not become immensely rich, which did happen to one of his younger brothers, and they were not greatly simpatico with each other for that very reason. One was my father spoke about brother so-and-so as, well, he's the big shot. And in fact, the truth is he was a big shot. But interestingly, I always found that the big shot, he the big shot, was a great provider in philanthropic sense. He was successful in his business, and he knew other people who were successful. And when it came time to raise money, for example, for the United Jewish Appeal, the UJA, which is an old established philanthropic fund, he was the one who could go to Sam and say, Sam, you're going to give $500,000 this year. And because of who he was and his personality and his own success, he got away with that. My father did not do that. My father was not of that sort. So there you are. You know, there's different kinds of, my uncle was, he scared me when I was little. He was very loud and very brash. But it turns out that he was a good person. And after my father died, my mother lived quite close to this uncle and his wife. They had apartments in different places, but near each other, and they were very caring about my mother, and it surprised me because they had not been that way so much when my father was, when my father was alive, but they became that, and it let me see him in a different way. Yeah.
I find it funny that you say you're not particularly ambitious, because as someone who's written 8 books, I can't fathom writing one. I find that very ambitious. I mean, I don't know if you set out to write as many books as you did, or if it just kind of happened over time, accumulated.
None of these is a bestseller. I started my writing career, other than high school. There was a lot of years before I went back to it. My writing career started very late. I published first book at 65, which is not ideal for becoming famous, because people, agents and publishers look at you and they say, well, he doesn't have an awful long time still to go. So we're not going to, we're not going to take him on as a client. I got to that when I had finished other stuff. And by the way, I'm very happy that I did all the other stuff. I started out determined to work in advertising in New York, and I did. I got a job, poor paying but prestigious, with Young and Rubicam, which was a very, thought to be a great job for a beginner. And I went through that, and I went through a couple of other businesses, and then I went through teaching, and I'm glad that I did all of that, and I'm glad that it's over now, and that I don't have to do that. Look, I think one of the things that would be interesting to talk about in terms of ambition is, when is there enough? When should there be enough? Somebody like, forgive me if you're a Republican, someone like Donald Trump will never cease to be ambitious. It
Yeah.
consumes him.
Yeah.
And he's not alone. There are a good number of people like that. People who are immensely successful monetarily, but are they really successful? And when is there enough?
I it's funny you bring that up because I was just thinking how my my dad's grandfather was very successful and very very wealthy. My dad's mother's father, very very wealthy and successful. And my dad's father was not very wealthy. You know, he was blue collar guy, hard working guy. But of the things I know about my grandfather, my dad's dad, and the things I know about my great grandfather, I only know one thing about my great grandfather, and it's that he was rich. Because that's the only thing anyone's ever really told me about him. But my grandfather, I know a lot about him because the qualities that I think stand the test of time and remain after you die are not your wealth. Nobody cares about your wealth once you're dead. But if you were a good person, people talk about that a lot. And I think it's, you know, to your point. When is it enough? I mean, if your sole goal is to be wealthy, what are people going to talk about you when you die? Because if it's wealth, like nobody really cares to talk about that once you're gone. And no one, you know, you can't bring that with you. But if you're a good person, people will talk about you to their kids, and then their kids will talk about you to their kids. And here I am talking about my grandfather to you, and I never even met him. So it's this, you know, it's this quality of longevity in your legacy. I think that money and success and ambition in that regard, I don't think facilitates that very well. I think it's your character that lives on, you know. And I think that that's something that I've always sort of prioritized is being someone that somebody would be glad to know.
Well, that's ambition too, isn't it?
I suppose maybe it is.
I think it is. If I may go back once more to my own family, my father, being an immigrant, unschooled, he went back to school, but he didn't really finish when he was young. He had to go to work, and he did. He was very responsible. But work for him was integral to his life.
Mm.
And even as he got old and older and older and somewhat senile, he continued to want to work. He was an insurance salesman, independent. He was successful at it, but he didn't stop.
Huh.
And he would work until he died, except that he didn't always know Monday from Tuesday, which became sort of sad. And I, by contrast, started teaching when I was already in my middle 30s, which meant that I finished 20 years of teaching when I was in my middle 50s and could begin very soon after that to begin to collect a modest pension. And I did that.
Mm.
And people said, but you're too young you can't retire when you're 56 years old. And I thought, yes, I can. Because, I mean, I costed it out to see if I really could, and I could. I didn't, I got a modest pension, and it still is modest, but at least it's there. But I really wanted to leave my job in teaching while I was still positive about it. I had had a good experience. I taught in a good suburban school, had a lot of really good students, had basically a good career. And it was a second or a third career, I guess. And then I thought, it's enough. You know,
Yeah.
I want to go do something else.
I think more people should think about it that way because, I think you want to be able to enjoy life while you still have, I mean, to harken back to our episode 7, but while you still have your health. You know, you want to be able to, I think so many people work and work and work so they can finally one day spend all the money that they spent their whole lives making, but then by the time they decide they can, they're not well enough or they're too old to be able to do any of the things they always wanted to do. And how much money do you really need? You know, at the end of the day, if you prioritize the things that you really want to be able to do, be it travel or go to dinner with your friends or you know, write a book or whatever it is that you want to do.
I'm just really happy that I did what I did. It was not way early planned, but the way it worked out because it gave me years to travel, to be sure, wonderful trips, and to write, and to just have years of doing what I want to do.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, because I have a lot of friends from where I grew up that went into finance, which, you know, I think a lot of people do that because that's where all the money is, because they're the ones who make it. But I watch how much they've grinded in the last 6-7 years to get to the place where they are starting to get to now in their late 20s and early 30s, where they're making an exorbitant amount of money that I've never seen. But they work so hard, and they, you know, 70, 80, 90 hour weeks.
I hear that, yeah.
And I never wanted that. And I didn't have a lot of friends who didn't want that, sorry. I didn't have a lot of friends who didn't want to make a lot of money the way that I didn't really care for making money. I always thought, I want to do what I want to do. I want to enjoy the thing that I do, because if I enjoy it, then it's not really work. And, you know, as you know, I always come in a bit flustered when I come here on Thursdays, and it's because I have to work 6 or 7 jobs to be able to afford to do the thing I'm doing.
Yeah.
But it is so much fun. I enjoy every second of the things that I'm doing, even though it's exhausting. I'm not sitting behind a desk waiting for the clock to turn 5 so I can go home. I'm running around scrounging up money in all these different places, meeting all these different kinds of people in all these different industries, and constantly doing creative work, and it doesn't feel like work. And am I as wealthy or successful as some of my friends who went into finance? Absolutely not. But I think I had a lot more fun over the last decade than they have, and I'm grateful for it.
And the coming decade probably too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a longer road, but I think it's just, you know, it's more fun. It's a lot more fun, and it's a lot more fulfilling for me.
How does your family feel about your trajectory?
I think that they're happy about it. I think, you know, my mom came from very, very modest means. She grew up in a relatively poor family, but she grew up in a neighborhood where everyone was of the same economic class, so she didn't know what being poor was, because everyone had what she had. You know, everyone kind of did. So she never really thought about money at all. And she was so happy just doing the things that she did. And my dad was, you know, higher economic class than my mom was when he grew up. But then he was a creative in a world of people who were doing hard labor. You know, they ran a ski mountain. So my dad was working night shifts as the night manager at the ski mountain and doing all of the laborious stuff, and simultaneously trying to be an actor. And his priority has always been creative, and my mom's priority has always been people. So growing up, I had my dad, who was always cultivating an environment of creativity for me, and my mom, who was always encouraging me to be as open to people as I possibly could be. And I think that though I haven't chosen really a career path, I think that my life trajectory is a perfect blend of exactly what they instilled in me.
I think you hit the jackpot. I do, yeah.
Yeah, maybe not the financial jackpot, but certainly a better jackpot than money.
And what you're doing, they understand.
Yeah, I think they understand it, and I think they really like it. I don't think that they worry for me much at all. I trust that they trust me, and I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll have to have a job one day if I, you know, like a 9 to 5 or whatever, if I have a kid or something, and my priorities change, and I have to start to focus on someone else other than me and my partner and my friends. But right now, I think that I'm building something that I really enjoy, and
I say bravo.
well,
Good.
thank you very much. Bravo to you as well.
Where are we?
31:46. That time, that internal clock has hit it again. Yeah, but overall, I think ambition is a wonderful quality, but kind of like not to be cliche, but kind of like taming a wild horse. It needs to be met with a lot of care.
If it's not overdone, if you can, exactly, if you can rein it in when it needs to be reined in and not let it rule your life.
Yeah.
Yep.
Know when enough is enough.
Yep. Good to see you, Mickey.
Good to see you, Stanley. Thank you for doing this again with me. Bye, everybody.